Well, yeah, we had to race them pretty good there and watch our gas mileage there at the end, but we did exactly what you told us and we wanted to race.
Dale Earnhardt Sr. built one of the greatest careers in NASCAR history, earning the respect of fans and rivals alike. But after his tragic death in 2001, attention turned to something few people had ever seen: his private garage. Hidden inside were race cars, personal belongings, and unexpected items that revealed a side of Earnhardt the public rarely knew. Join us as we uncover what they found inside Dale Earnhardt's garage after his death and why those discoveries continue to fascinate NASCAR fans today. The Secret Garage. For millions of racing fans, Dale Earnhardt Sr. was larger than life. On the track, he was fearless, aggressive, and impossible to ignore. His black No. 3 Chevrolet, trademark sunglasses, and thick mustache became some of the most recognizable symbols in NASCAR history. People knew him as the Intimidator, a driver who never backed down from a challenge and never apologized for racing hard. But away from packed grandstands and television cameras, there was another side of Dale that very few people ever got to see. Earnhardt was extremely protective of his private life. Even though he was one of the biggest names in motorsports, he kept a clear line between his public career and his personal world. He enjoyed spending time with family, hunting, fishing, working on cars, and relaxing at his property in Mooresville, North Carolina. While fans saw the confident racer every weekend, only a small group of close friends, family members, and trusted employees ever saw the places where he truly felt at home. One of those places was his private garage. Unlike the race shops used by his NASCAR team, this garage was never built for public tours or media appearances. It wasn't featured in magazines, and television crews rarely stepped inside. Even many people who worked in NASCAR for years had never seen the entire building. Those who did understood that it wasn't simply another place to store race cars. It was personal, and Dale wanted it to stay that way. That is why the garage became such an important place after his tragic death during the final lap of the 2001 Daytona 500. When family members and longtime friends entered the building in the days and weeks that followed, they weren't just sorting through possessions. They were walking into a place that Dale had quietly shaped over decades. The atmosphere inside was emotional. Every corner reminded them of his life, his career, and the memories he had chosen to preserve. There were no grand speeches or dramatic displays. Instead, the silence inside the garage spoke for itself. The garage was surprisingly simple. It wasn't filled with expensive decorations or flashy lighting. There were no polished marble floors or carefully designed museum exhibits. Instead, everything reflected Dale's practical personality. The building was clean and organized, but it looked like a place where real work happened every day. Toolboxes stood beside race cars. Shelves held spare parts and equipment. Tires, engines, and racing gear sat exactly where they had been placed. Nothing felt staged. That simple appearance made the space even more powerful. As people moved through the garage, it became clear that every section represented a different chapter of Earnhardt's life. One area focused on his early racing years. Another contained championship-winning cars. Nearby were personal photographs, hunting gear, family keepsakes, and handwritten notes that had never been intended for public view. Walking through the garage felt like discovering parts of Dale's story that had never been shared before. Instead of reading about his life in a book, visitors found themselves learning through the objects he had decided to keep. Every item seemed to have a reason for being there. The race cars represented victories, setbacks, and unforgettable moments on the track. The trophies celebrated success, but they were displayed alongside much smaller awards from local races and community events. Racing suits still showed signs of years of hard competition. Helmets carried scratches from countless battles. Old tools reminded everyone that Dale had always enjoyed working with his hands. Scattered among these larger pieces were photographs, newspaper clippings, handwritten reminders, and personal notes. Some were simple, while others captured moments with family and close friends that fans had never seen before. Together, these items showed that Dale valued memories just as much as accomplishments. One reason the garage felt so authentic was because almost nothing had been changed. Cars remained parked where he had left them. Equipment stayed in place. Personal belongings were untouched. Rather than reorganizing or updating the space, those closest to him recognized that the garage itself had become part of his story. People who knew Earnhardt had often believed he attached strong meaning to the things he kept. Instead of throwing away items after they had served their purpose, he held on to many of them because they reminded him of important people, difficult times, or major milestones. To him, those objects carried memories that didn't need to be explained. One statement often connected to Earnhardt captured that idea perfectly. He once said, "I left behind everything there." After his passing, those words took on a much deeper meaning. The garage became an unexpected time capsule, preserving not only the career of one of NASCAR's greatest champions, but also the personality of the man behind the public image. It revealed someone who appreciated his beginnings, respected the people who helped him succeed, and quietly held on to the moments that mattered most. For many of those who entered the building after his death, the biggest surprise wasn't what Dale had won, it was what he had chosen to remember. But one car sitting in the middle of that garage told the most personal story of all: the 1957 Chevrolet Bel Air. For many visitors, the biggest surprise inside Dale Earnhardt Sr.'s private garage wasn't one of his championship-winning NASCAR race cars. It wasn't the famous black No. 3 Chevrolet or one of the machines that carried him to 7 Cup Series titles. Instead, the vehicle that quietly drew the most attention was a 1957 Chevrolet Bel Air sitting near the center of the building. At first glance, the Bel Air didn't seem like the most valuable car in the collection. It wasn't connected to one of Earnhardt's greatest victories, and it hadn't become famous on television. But its location made it clear that Dale viewed it differently. It occupied the heart of the garage, surrounded by some of the most personal items he had kept throughout his life. Anyone walking into the building naturally noticed it before anything else. Its position wasn't about money or rarity, it was about meaning. Unlike many classic cars that are restored until they look brand new, this Bel Air had been carefully preserved instead. There is an important difference between those two ideas. A restored car often receives fresh paint, new upholstery, rebuilt parts, and polished finishes that make it appear as though it just left the factory. Earnhardt chose not to do that. The Bel Air still carried its age proudly. Its original paint showed years of use. The upholstery inside had natural wear instead of replacement fabric. The engine compartment still contained older parts, faded labels, and signs of years spent being worked on. The chrome trim had lost some of its shine and showed the natural aging that comes with time. Instead of hiding those imperfections, Dale left them exactly as they were. That decision tells a great deal about how he viewed the car. The Bel Air wasn't important because it looked perfect. It was important because it remained honest. Every worn surface represented a memory that couldn't be replaced by fresh paint or new parts. Restoring it would have erased part of its history, and history mattered more to Earnhardt than appearance. The reason for that becomes much clearer when looking at his relationship with his father, Ralph Earnhardt. Long before Dale became one of the greatest drivers NASCAR had ever seen, he was simply a young boy growing up in Kannapolis, North Carolina. His father was already respected throughout local racing circles as one of the best short-track drivers in the region. Ralph didn't have enormous financial resources, but he had incredible mechanical knowledge and a deep love for racing. Much of Dale's childhood was spent watching his father work on cars. He stood nearby as Ralph repaired engines, adjusted suspension parts, and prepared race cars for the next weekend. Instead of learning from books or classrooms, Dale learned by watching, asking questions, and helping whenever he could. Those early experiences gave him a strong understanding of how race cars actually worked. As he grew older, those lessons became incredibly valuable. They helped him understand what drivers needed from their cars and allowed him to communicate with mechanics in ways that many other drivers couldn't. Before he became known for his driving ability, he had already developed a lifelong respect for the work that happened inside the garage. The Bel Air reminded him of those years. Even though it wasn't the exact car his father worked on throughout his childhood, it represented that period of his life better than any trophy ever could. It brought back memories of evenings spent around tools, grease-covered hands, and conversations about racing before Dale had ever dreamed of becoming a NASCAR champion. that connection became even more obvious because of what surrounded the Bel Air. Family photographs had been carefully placed around the car, creating one of the most personal areas in the entire garage. Some pictures showed Dale as a young boy sitting on toolboxes or standing beside cars. Others showed him with Ralph Earnhardt during his childhood years. In many of the photos, both father and son wore work clothes stained with grease from hours spent repairing engines together. These weren't carefully staged family portraits. They captured ordinary moments that meant everything to Dale. Visitors didn't need anyone to explain the display. The photographs answered the question immediately. This wasn't simply a classic Chevrolet parked inside a private collection. It represented family, childhood, learning, and the beginning of a journey that eventually led to NASCAR greatness. That emotional connection is what separated the Bel Air from every championship-winning race car sitting elsewhere in the garage. His race cars represented victories, records, championships, and fame. The Bel Air represented a home. It reminded everyone that before Dale Earnhardt became the Intimidator, he was just a young boy learning from his father in a North Carolina garage. It honored the person who first introduced him to racing and the values that stayed with him throughout his entire career. Many visitors later said this simple car became one of the most emotional discoveries inside the garage because it revealed what mattered most to Dale. Fame may have filled the rest of the building, but the Bel Air quietly reminded everyone where his story truly began. The cars parked around the Bel Air would reveal the next chapters of that story, and each one still carried the marks of the races that made Dale Earnhardt a legend. The race cars. While the 1957 Chevrolet Bel Air revealed where Dale Earnhardt's story began, the race cars parked throughout the rest of his garage showed how that story unfolded. These weren't polished display pieces prepared for museums or auction houses. They were the actual machines that had carried him through some of the biggest moments of his NASCAR career. Even more surprising was the condition they were kept in. Instead of restoring them until they looked brand new, Earnhardt chose to leave many of them almost exactly as they were when they came off the racetrack. That decision made a powerful impression on everyone who entered the garage. The most recognizable vehicles were the famous black No. 3 GM Goodwrench Chevrolet race cars. Several versions from different seasons were preserved, each representing a different chapter of Earnhardt's career. At first glance, visitors noticed something unusual. These cars weren't spotless. They still carried tire marks, scratches along the body panels, small dents from close racing, chipped paint around the fenders, and layers of dirt collected during competition. Most collectors would have repaired every mark until the cars looked factory fresh. Earnhardt saw things differently. To him, every scrape told part of the story. Every dent represented a race, a rival, or a hard-earned finish. Cleaning away those marks would have erased part of the car's history. The battle scars reminded him that victories were rarely clean or easy. NASCAR was built on hard racing, and his cars reflected exactly that. Those who knew Earnhardt often said he appreciated authenticity more than perfection. He wanted these cars to remain honest records of what happened on the track. Instead of displaying idealized versions of his race cars, he preserved them exactly as they had finished their work. Several of these cars were directly connected to some of the greatest moments of his career. One of the most talked about vehicles was the Chevrolet Monte Carlo, associated with his incredible victory in the 1996 Winston 500 at Talladega Superspeedway. During that race, Earnhardt battled through the field from deep in the pack during the closing laps to take one of the most memorable wins of his career. The car still carried signs of the demanding race that had made it famous. Other preserved cars came from Bristol Motor Speedway, one of Earnhardt's favorite tracks. Bristol's tight, high-banked layout often produced rough racing, and his cars showed it. Small dents, paint rubbed away by contact with competitors, and marks from running inches away from concrete walls remained untouched. Instead of repairing those imperfections, they became permanent reminders of the aggressive driving style that made Earnhardt both feared and respected. Talladega was also strongly represented throughout the collection. Earnhardt won at the massive Alabama Superspeedway more times than almost anyone else in NASCAR history. His ability to draft through traffic and make daring moves in the closing laps became legendary. The Talladega cars preserved in his garage reflected those unforgettable performances. Rather than focusing only on championship seasons, they highlighted races where his skill behind the wheel amazed both fans and fellow drivers. Several championship-era Richard Childress racing cars were also carefully preserved. Those vehicles represented one of the most successful partnerships in NASCAR history. Richard Childress and Dale Earnhardt built an incredible relationship based on trust, determination, and a shared desire to win. Together, they captured 6 of Earnhardt's 7 Cup championships and transformed the black number 3 into one of the sport's most recognizable symbols. But the garage didn't only celebrate the years when Earnhardt had already become a superstar. One section took visitors back to an earlier chapter that many newer fans knew very little about. Before the famous black Goodwrench Chevrolet became part of NASCAR history, Earnhardt raced blue and yellow. Wrangler-sponsored cars during the mid-1980s. These cars represented the period when he was developing into one of the toughest competitors in the sport. His aggressive style was already becoming well known. Rivals understood that racing against Dale meant giving everything they had because he refused to back down. The Wrangler years helped build the reputation that would eventually earn him the nickname the Intimidator. These cars also marked the beginning of his long partnership with Richard Childress Racing. That relationship would shape the rest of his career and eventually produce multiple championships, unforgettable victories, and one of the greatest driver-owner partnerships NASCAR has ever seen. The garage reached even further back in time with several of Earnhardt's earliest racing machines. Among them was an old Busch Series Oldsmobile that looked far less impressive than the championship-winning stock cars parked nearby. It lacked the famous sponsor logos and polished appearance of his later cars, but its importance was impossible to overlook. This was a reminder of the difficult years before success arrived. During the late 1970s, Earnhardt raced at tracks such as Concord Speedway and Metrolina Fairgrounds while trying to build a career. Money was always tight. Cars were often repaired with whatever parts were available. Every race carried enormous financial risk because one serious crash could leave a driver without enough money to compete again the following weekend. Friends later recalled that Earnhardt understood exactly how fragile those early opportunities were. Every lap mattered because every race affected whether he could continue chasing his dream. That old Oldsmobile represented determination more than speed. It reminded visitors that before championships, sponsorships, and national fame, Dale Earnhardt was simply another young driver trying to prove he belonged. Looking across the garage, one thing became very clear. Most NASCAR teams eventually sell old race cars, recycle them into newer chassis, or display only their most famous championship vehicles. Earnhardt chose a different path. He kept cars that represented victories, struggles, learning experiences, and turning points. Some celebrated success, while others reminded him of difficult seasons that shaped his career. Together, they created a complete timeline of his life in racing. Every car marked another step along the road, from a young racer with limited resources to one of the greatest drivers NASCAR has ever produced. But the cars were only part of the story, because the personal items sitting beside them revealed the man few people ever got to know. The personal items. The race cars inside Dale Earnhardt Sr.'s garage told the story of his career, but the smaller personal items revealed something even more meaningful. They showed the man behind the famous nickname, the Intimidator. While fans knew him as a fierce competitor who never gave an inch on the racetrack, the things he chose to keep painted a picture of someone who valued hard work, loyalty, family, and simple memories. Every shelf, wall, and storage cabinet held pieces of a life that extended far beyond NASCAR. One of the first collections that caught visitors' attention was his helmets. Lined up by different stages of his career, they showed how both Earnhardt and the sport had changed over the years. The oldest helmets were simple, open-face designs from his early racing days. Compared to modern equipment, they offered very little protection. They reflected an era when drivers accepted far greater risks every time they climbed into a race car. As visitors moved farther down the display, they could see the steady evolution of safety equipment. The helmets became stronger, more advanced, and better designed as NASCAR adopted new technology. Looking at them side by side, it was easy to see how much the sport had changed during Earnhardt's career. But what stood out most wasn't the technology. Many of the helmets still showed signs of years spent on the track. Some had scratched paint from flying debris. Others had worn visors clouded by thousands of racing laps. A few even carried sweat stains inside the padding, reminders of the long, physically demanding races Dale had completed. One helmet attracted particular attention because of a short handwritten message on its visor. Written in silver marker were the words, "Ran it hot, won it anyway." Whether it was written by Earnhardt himself or someone close to the team, the note perfectly captured his racing style. He pushed both himself and his equipment to the limit, refusing to quit even when conditions became difficult. Nearby hung several of his fire suits. Unlike museum displays where uniforms often appear perfectly pressed and spotless, these suits looked like they had just been taken off after a race weekend. Some showed signs of heavy use, while others carried small repairs from years of competition. One detail stood out above everything else. Attached to one spare fire suit was a simple handwritten note that read, "Use only if desperate." The message was practical, direct, and even a little humorous. It reflected the way Earnhardt approached racing. He wasn't interested in appearances. He simply wanted equipment that worked. Beside the suits sat an old leather duffel bag. Its surface was covered with faded travel passes and credentials from tracks across the country, including Atlanta, Michigan, and Richmond. The bag had clearly traveled thousands of miles over many racing seasons. Instead of replacing it with something newer, Dale kept using it. Items like the duffel bag and the spare suit showed that he wasn't someone who threw things away simply because they were old. If something remained useful, he kept it. That practical attitude matched the personality his friends often described. Another part of the garage displayed trophies collected throughout his life. Naturally, the famous awards drew immediate attention. His 1998 Daytona 500 trophy stood proudly among the collection, representing one of the most emotional victories of his career after nearly 2 decades of trying to win NASCAR's biggest race. But what surprised many visitors was everything displayed beside it. There were small trophies from local dirt tracks, old plaques from Hickory Motor Speedway, awards from community events, thank you gifts from charity fundraisers where Earnhardt had donated his time or memorabilia. Some were simple wooden plaques, while others looked worn from decades of storage. None of these awards carried the prestige of a Daytona 500 trophy, yet Dale had kept them all. That choice said a great deal about what mattered to him. He didn't separate his biggest accomplishments from the smaller moments that helped shape his journey. To him, a hometown award could carry just as much personal value as a national championship because both represented important parts of his life. Away from the racing equipment, visitors also discovered items connected to another side of Earnhardt. He loved spending time outdoors, especially hunting and fishing, and those interests were visible throughout the garage. Mounted on one wall was one of his hunting rifles. Nearby hung a camouflage cap that had been hand-stitched with the letters DEI by an admirer. It wasn't expensive or professionally made, but Earnhardt had chosen to keep it. Another unusual item was a set of antlers labeled as a post-race gift following Talladega in 1990. Close by was a signed photograph of racing legend Johnny Rutherford, reflecting the friendships and respect Earnhardt shared with others in motorsports. Together, these objects reminded visitors that his world wasn't limited to racetracks. He valued friendships, outdoor traditions, and thoughtful gifts just as much as trophies. Scattered throughout the garage were also handwritten notes, family photographs, and personal reminders. Many of the photographs had never been published. They showed quiet moments with family members, close friends, and fellow racers away from television cameras. Some captured vacations, hunting trips, or simple afternoons spent working around the property. The handwritten reminders were even more personal. They weren't meant for fans or reporters. They were everyday notes that Dale had left for himself while moving from one race weekend to the next. Taken together, these personal belongings revealed a side of Dale Earnhardt that many people never fully knew. Behind the fierce competitor stood a man who valued memories over appearances, friendships over attention, and simple moments just as much as famous victories. But some of the strangest things in the garage had nothing to do with racing at all. The strange finds that nobody expected. As meaningful as Dale Earnhardt Sr.'s race cars, trophies, and personal keepsakes were, some of the most memorable discoveries inside his garage were the items nobody expected to find. These weren't championship trophies or famous race-winning machines. They were everyday objects that reflected his personality, his sense of humor, and the simple way he lived when the cameras weren't around. One of the first unusual items visitors noticed was a forklift parked near the back of the garage. At first, it seemed completely out of place among legendary race cars. But this wasn't an ordinary forklift. It had been decorated with Winston Cup decals and even carried a small number 3 sticker on its side. It looked like Dale had turned a simple piece of shop equipment into something that belonged in his racing world. According to former employees at Dale Earnhardt Incorporated, the forklift wasn't just for decoration. Dale enjoyed driving it himself whenever heavy engines, parts, or equipment needed to be moved around the shop. Even though employees were available to do the work, he often climbed into the driver's seat anyway. Those who worked with him remembered that he liked to joke about it, calling it his real number 3 ride whenever he wasn't behind the wheel of a race car. It was a small joke, but it fit his personality. Despite becoming one of NASCAR's biggest stars, he never acted like certain jobs were beneath him. If something needed moving, he was happy to help. Not far away stood another surprising piece of NASCAR history, a large Wrangler advertising billboard. The sign was old, faded, and clearly weathered after years outdoors. Its edges showed rust, the paint had started to fade, and time had left its mark across the entire surface. Most people would have thrown it away years earlier. Dale didn't. The billboard came from the early years of his partnership with Wrangler during the 1980s, before the black Goodwrench number 3 became famous. Those were the years when he was still building his reputation as one of the toughest drivers in NASCAR. Another unexpected discovery sat quietly in one corner of the garage. An old soda machine still stood against the wall, and according to people who visited the shop over the years, it remained fully operational. Inside were classic Coca-Cola and Mountain Dew cans, including special NASCAR-themed designs from years past. Perhaps the most personal corner of the garage was a small sitting area near one of the exits. There stood a cracked leather recliner that looked as though it had been used for decades. The cushions had sunk from years of use, and the armrests showed signs of constant wear. Together, these ordinary objects made one thing clear. Dale Earnhardt's garage wasn't designed to impress visitors. It was a place where he worked, relaxed, laughed, and spent time doing the things he enjoyed most. If you enjoyed this look inside Dale Earnhardt's hidden world, be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next deep dive into the lives and untold stories of racing's greatest legends.